So you want to train 5 days a week, get jacked, have fun, and follow the push-pull legs upper lower split, because I don't know how else to intro this, then this is the video for you probably. I'm going to walk through how to program this. I'm going to talk about some considerations. I'll talk about the pros and cons of this split, etc., all that shit. Let's get right into it. So, pros and cons of the split. First of all, the biggest pro, if we want to be some positive Peters today, start optimistic, then the biggest pro is probably the fact that it's just pretty fun. And the reason for that is because you can usually do a lot more exercises with the push and pull day specifically. The lower day is basically going to be the same, like the legs and lower day, we're going to do the same thing, and I'll talk about why. But with the push and pull days, since we're not having to train the entire upper body or the entire body, we're only training like in push, obviously that's chest, shoulders, triceps typically, we're only training 3 muscle groups. So what does that mean? We can do a lot more for each muscle group. Whether that means we do more sets in total of the same exercises, or we do more exercises overall, which we'll talk about if you should do one or the other there. It leaves us with more room to play and have fun, essentially. That's the biggest pro, and it's one of the few pros, to be honest. Besides that, some of the cons are that, one, we're training 5 days a week, which is like the most amount that I would typically recommend somebody trains. Now, that's not to say that you can't train every day or 6 days a week and still make good progress, but if we understand physiology and we understand central nervous system fatigue, then we understand that training 7 days in a row or 6 days in a row likely isn't ideal. Even if the program is dialed in and we're very much minimizing muscle damage, there's still likely going to be some central fatigue affecting the subsequent workouts. And so physiologically, it is likely inferior to a split with more rest days, less subsequent workouts. You can argue there if you want, but the physiology kind of speaks for itself there. Not to sound like a fucking nerd, even though I am one, but yeah. So 5 days isn't ideal, but it is 100% doable, and that's where I usually will recommend like I will program this split for clients. I've had a lot of clients do this. I usually won't go up to 6 days. Like that's usually where I'll draw the line. So I think 5 days is that good kind of sweet spot, if you want to call it that. It's not the sweet spot. It's like the higher. You guys get what I'm saying. My brain's not working. I've been working all day. My brain's not working, but you guys get what I'm saying. So that's, I guess, a pro and a con depending on how you look at it. If you want to be optimistic or if you want to be pessimistic. So there's that. There's the fact that specifically we have 3 subsequent workouts. We have push-pull legs. Typically, you're going to do that like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It doesn't matter which days of the week you do it, but you're going to do it 3 days in a row. And like I said, there's going to be, just to explain that real quick in case you're unfamiliar with this principle, there's going to be, when we create muscle damage specifically, this is what the model seems to be. When we create muscle damage within a workout, that muscle damage then creates, I'm not wording this properly, but our body then creates an inflammatory response in order to repair that muscle damage. And so this inflammatory response, the inflammatory markers in the bloodstream, or I just kind of leaked what I was trying to say, and if you see what I'm about to say, those inflammatory markers then leak into the bloodstream. Holy fucking full circle moment there, eh? Okay, I don't even know what's going on anymore, but those inflammatory markers leak into the bloodstream, it seems like, and they can then be detected by your brain. And so this will create what's called supraspinal fatigue, which just means like brain fatigue. And so this will affect your entire body. So a lot of people will think like, oh, I hit legs yesterday. That means I'm going to be good to hit anything upper body today because my upper body's recovered. And that might be the case, but your central nervous system is not recovered, most likely, if there is muscle damage present because of what I just explained. And so your output for your upper body is now going to be limited by this central nervous system, supraspinal specifically fatigue. And so if we understand that principle, then we understand that training subsequent days is not going to be ideal. And this form of fatigue seems like it can build up over time as well. And so if you think about it, the more subsequent days you work out, the less rest days you take, the more of a problem this can potentially become. And so we have to be very meticulous and smart with our programming. And we should do this regardless, of course, but there's just less margin for error, essentially. And now you can make the argument with like something like full body when you're doing a 3 times frequency. There's less margin for error in terms of a peripheral fatigue standpoint. So like at the muscle level specifically, because we're training each muscle more frequently. Now here we're training in general more frequently. So there's less room for error when it comes to central nervous system fatigue. And like I said, the main thing there is muscle damage. And so there are a couple things that we can do within our programming to not completely eliminate muscle damage, but to minimize it while still getting stimulus. Because when we train close to failure, which is what we have to do to stimulate muscle growth, there is going to be muscle damage to an extent. So we can't completely avoid it, but we can minimize it if we're smart. So other than that, besides that, it's also tough to program because of the fact that we have these push and pull days where I explained that we're going to have more room to do more exercises, right? But if we understand the principle that we want to likely repeat the same movements twice a week in order to get the benefits of a higher frequency, which I'll explain in 1 second, that makes it tricky. So, for example, I'm going to show you this in a few seconds here, but for example, if I want to do like a flat press and an incline press and a decline press and a shoulder press and a lateral raise and a tricep push down and a JM press, that's 7 exercises right there on a push day. If we wanted to get the benefits of the 2 times muscle frequency, we would then ideally want to repeat those same movements in our upper day here, right? And if you imagine if we did a similar thing for our pull day, let's say we did like 5 or 6 exercises and we want to combine those 2 days into one big upper day, you're looking at a fucking 12 to 13, if I did the math right there, exercise upper day. Like, that's a lot of fucking exercises for an upper day. That's a lot for a full body day. So you can see where the trickiness is there. And we'll talk about whether or not you actually need to do that and how I would recommend going about that. But first I want to explain why we want to repeat these movements so that idea makes sense. Again, watch my other videos. I explain these in depth. But first of all, why is frequency important? So there's 2 main reasons. 1, we have to understand that each subsequent set that you do for a muscle group in a workout is going to be less stimulating than the one prior. In other words, volume has diminishing returns because of fatigue, specifically intra-session fatigue in this case. So you hit a hard set, you train close to failure. The next set that you do, even if you rest a while, and that is one of the things that you should do to mitigate that intra-session fatigue, as well as some other things that we're going to talk about, that's also going to mitigate muscle damage, so it's going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But regardless of all that, that second set that you do still won't be as stimulating. Now, how much less stimulating it will be will depend on all those things that I just said, as well as your training status, a million other things. I'm not getting into that. And so quantifying it is tricky. There are 2 different meta-analyses that have actually done this. There's one by Pelland and one by Schoenfeld, I believe. And I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head because it doesn't matter. But it's significant. Like, I believe in one of them, the second set produced about like 66% of the growth of the first one. And in the other meta-analysis, I think it was closer to like 33%. So you can see how much the diminishing returns, how much of an effect that actually has. And so based on that, if we were to then, instead of doing, let's say 5 sets for a muscle group 1 time a week, what if we then split up those 5 sets to, let's say, 3 sets one day and 2 sets another day? That way we're getting more of those first sets that are going to be higher quality, more stimulating than the later ones, right? So we're essentially spreading out that stimulus across the week to get more higher quality stimulus overall. Combine that with the other main principle, with the fact that muscle fibers seem to always either be growing or shrinking. So they're never technically at maintenance, like they're never just staying still. They're either being stimulated to grow by things like walking and general movement, or ideally training to stimulate the higher threshold fibers, or they are shrinking if they're not being stimulated. And so if we train with a higher frequency, we spend less time shrinking and more time growing, right? That's the basic framework, model, idea, theory behind why a higher frequency is important. Now, if we also understand that different exercises are going to train different muscle fibers, then if we are to train muscles 2 times a week, sorry, I'm having a brain fart, then we would theoretically want to repeat the same movements each time to then train those same muscle fibers 2 times a week and actually get that benefit of the additional frequency for all of the muscle fibers, right? So there's two main principles there that we're combining. There's the muscle fiber recruitment aspect to different exercises, and then there's the frequency aspect. And so if we want to take advantage of both of those things, which we should theoretically, then we want to repeat the same movements 2 times a week in this case, or 3 times a week, in order to get those benefits, right? Hopefully that idea makes sense. I tried to simplify it. Definitely could have explained it better. I've probably explained it better in previous videos, but hopefully that makes sense for now. With that said, you can see why this is going to be tricky, right? Because like I said, we now have a lot more room to do a lot more exercises on this push day, but that means if we want to take advantage of those things that I just said, we're going to want to repeat those on this upper day. And so we can either do a pretty long push day and then do a super long upper day, or we can do maybe a more condensed push day and then have like a more normal sized upper day, and we can maybe just do a little bit more volume on this day, which theoretically is going to be inferior. Yes, theoretically, if we could do one set of multiple exercises as opposed to 3 sets of one exercise, for example, the multiple exercises are going to be superior theoretically, I want to highlight that, because we're going to be training more muscle fibers, like I said, and because of motivation purposes and other things like that. And so theoretically, you should hopefully understand what we want to do here. Now, this is where the practical part becomes tricky. So, like I said, you can, by all means, let's write out what like a maximalist push day would look like. Basically what I said before. So let's say we go a pec deck. That's more like horizontal adduction, so like mid to lower chest. And then we go like incline press with the elbows more tucked in, so training more of that shoulder flexion and shoulder horizontal adduction to train more of the upper clavicular fibers, which I'm going to be making a video about the pecs, like everything you need to know about that new series. Be on the lookout for that. I'm very excited about that. So we have the upper chest now. Then we can do like either a dip or a decline press or even a pullover, where we're training more of shoulder extension, because the lower chest will contribute to shoulder extension as well. So now we've done 3 different exercises for the chest to train the 3 different heads. There's going to be overlap between all of them to an extent, but to train more fibers within each region essentially. So we've done that. Now we also want to do a shoulder press, because we want to train the front and side delts maximally, but we're going to be probably not maximally recruiting the side delts. So we want to do a lateral raise, and then we want to do a push down where our humerus isn't moving, your upper arm, your shoulder isn't moving, because the long head attaches to the shoulder. And so if we're moving at the shoulder joint and the elbow joint, it's probably going to be a little bit tricky to put tension on the long head. And so we want to do a push down for sure with our arm by our side, not moving, shoulder still, to train all 3 heads of the triceps. But let's say we also want to maybe get more medial and lateral heads specifically, and we wanted to disadvantage the long head and do exactly what I just said. And so we want to do something like a JM press, where we're moving at the shoulder joint now, to then theoretically bias more of the medial and lateral head. Or you could do something like an overhead extension, which may or may not bias the long head or the medial and lateral head. Don't have time to explain that here. I don't think we actually know the answer to that. But you can see this is 7 exercises, right? Yeah, that's 7 exercises. And this is what I would ideally do if I were doing like a typical push-pull leg split for sure. This is what you would want to do. And this is an awesome workout. You're training everything. But like I said, let's say we throw this in our upper day here, and we'll save that for later. Now let's do our pull day. Let's do another maximalist version of a pull day. So let's say we do lat pull down, pull up, whatever you want to do, more in the frontal plane. And then we do like an upper back row, we'll say, or you could do a kelso shrug as well. And then we do lat row, we'll say, so more of a sagittal plane movement where elbows are more tucked in, to train the different functions of the lats and theoretically train different regions, different fibers of the lats. So we want to do that. And then we also want to do, you could do like rear delts, but I'm just going to leave that out. We're not going to go that maximalist with this one. I think this one is a lot easier to program. Then we're going to do just a bicep curl. This is what I would do, honestly. And I think this is honestly the best approach you can do right here. Is like, you could go down the route of being maximalist with this. Like I said, you could go like rear delt fly and different bicep curl variation or curl variation in general. So you could go like flexed shoulder bicep curl, so like preacher curl, extended shoulder bicep curl, so like Bayesian curl, cable curl, whatever. And then you could also do like a reverse curl to train more of the brachioradialis, so you could get really maximalist with that. We're looking at, again, like 6, 7, 8 exercises. This is what I would do. I think these distinctions, like doing these different movements, is going to give you more of a significant variety of muscle fiber recruitment as opposed to doing multiple bicep curl variations. That's just my opinion. Like, I really don't think you need more than one curl variation. Same with triceps, to be honest. There's more of an argument here to do something like this, like a push down and a jam press. But I think just a push down and just a curl, for the majority of people, is going to be the most effective and sustainable approach. Now, that's not to say that theoretically we can't do more, because I've already explained why that is probably smart. But practically speaking, that is my preferred approach and what I think the majority of people should do. And in this case, it makes it much easier to program. So this pull day is now not that long. Now, speaking of what I was just saying, I don't think there's good evidence to suggest that there's significant difference between different curl variations in most cases. That's not to say there's no difference, because there likely is. But with that said, you could make the argument that, okay, maybe I want to take advantage of that and now do 2 different curl variations here, because I'm going to stimulate most of the same fibers here, but now I'm just getting more variety just for the sake of variety and enjoyment. And that's totally valid. You can 100% do that. And that's something that I recommend to my clients. Like, if you want to split up your volume that way, then be my guest, because we were going to do like 2 to 3 sets of curls here. So we might as well split that up, right? So I think, again, you can combine that. That one, not a big deal. Whatever you want to do there. Let's just say, I'm not worried about volume here, but let's just say like 2 sets of those. We'll even go like 1 set of these. I'll go like that. Again, I'm not putting too much thought into that. Volume is very much an individual thing. This is generally what seems to work for most people in my experience, though. Like, similar numbers to this. Again, you can probably throw like 2 in here because this is more shortened position depending on the machine. So we'll do that for now. Why not? Again, not putting too much thought into that. Now, so we've got these 2 days down. Now, let's say we want to copy and paste this like we did with the push day. Now, as I already explained, I'm just going to do 1 curl variation here, and whichever one you want to choose doesn't really matter in my opinion. Now, this is where things get tricky. So you can see here we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 exercises. For some, that's not that much. For some, that's a shit ton, especially if you want to do multiple sets for each. Now, again, I would probably stick to 1 set of most of these, just for time's sake, and because most people just don't have that many effective sets in a workout until they like start to lose motivation, energy, etc. That's going to depend on your cardiovascular fitness for one, as well as your fiber type proportion, voluntary activation, training status, etc., etc. That's mostly theory stuff, but yeah. So again, I'm not too worried about volume, but if we wanted to do this quite long upper day, you're most likely going to have to cut the volume down, because if you want to do 2 sets of each, 22 sets total, I don't know, man. It's a little bit different, I feel like, in my experience. Like, a 22 set full body day, first of all, that's way too much. I can't do that personally, and I don't know how people do that, but that compared to like a 22 set upper day, there's a difference. And we could talk about why that might be physiologically, theoretically, but I'm not here to do that right now. Point being, let's say this is the approach we want to go with. We want to go with more of that maximalist approach. I think this is the best way to do it. Now again, you could take out this JM press. This is what a less maximalist version would be, I guess. But then that begs the question, should you even do it here? Because it's a little bit different than this example with the bicep curls, because of, like I explained, there's likely a much more significant difference between the muscle fibers that you're training with a push down versus a jam press as compared to two different curl variations with varying shoulder angles, because of the fact that, like I said, if the shoulder is moving significantly, the long head is likely not working significantly. And so that begs the question, if I'm going to do a jam press on this day, is it even worth putting it in there if I'm not going to do it on this day? In my opinion, no, unless you just simply want to do it for the fun of it, which by all means, 100% go for it, 100% do it. Just be mindful of the fact that physiologically, I can't really see a reason how you can argue against, if you work with the models that I'm describing here and you agree with the things that I'm saying, then you can't really make a case for how you would be getting benefit from only doing one set of this once a week, unless that was enough to stimulate enough growth for the entire week, which we know is probably not the case. We probably want to do it one set twice a week is probably the minimum effective dose that we need. And so at that point, to me, I think just do it. Okay, whoops. I say just do the one set here, because it's one set. Like, it'll take you, assuming you don't have to warm up, which if you're strong, you're probably going to have to warm up. And that's an argument for another day. But assuming you're already warmed up because you already did a ton of pressing and stuff, which is another thing to consider here. There's a lot of pressing, and your elbow joints might not be too happy with you. And that can go back to, like, that's a kind of a separate argument. But I say just do it here. You might as well. If you're going to do it on this day, you might as well do it on this day as well. Get that one set in. Probably by the time I post this, my plan, if I stick to my post schedule plan, I sound so stupid right now, sorry. I'm going to make a video about, like, skipping muscle groups entirely or skipping exercises entirely versus just doing one set twice a week. Like, for me, this is what I do with hip thrusts. Like, I don't really care about my glutes, but I do want to be strong at hip extension, and I don't want to have weak glutes, and I want to be able to control my pelvis. And so in the sagittal plane, ideally I should be able to control it in the frontal plane as well. So something like a B stance, RDL, split squat, etc. That's another story for another day. But instead of just skipping that movement entirely, I just do one set twice a week. It takes me like 5 extra minutes each time. It's not a big deal. So I say, let's apply that same principle here. Now, you can then make the argument about the curls, which, again, that's just a preference thing if you want to split up that volume into multiple things. The main thing to consider here is, what are you actually going to be able to stick to? It can be very easy to do this for a couple weeks, especially if you're fucking unemployed and you're a kid, which you probably are if you're watching this, unfortunately. I think people think that I'm a lot younger than I am, and so I attract a younger audience, which is probably reflective of my personality and stuff, which you guys don't give a shit about. But for people that are busy like myself and people that have more responsibilities than me, like, doing something like this might not be sustainable. So you got to figure that out for yourself. Just understand that, like, if you're going to do this, if you're going to try this split or try going this maximalist route, ask yourself, am I actually going to be able to sustain this? Is this actually worth implementing, or am I just going to end up scrapping it, and should I just not even do it in the first place? And that's just going to come down to you specifically, what you want to do with there. So yeah, that's just a random tangent that I wanted to go on. But this is how you could set this up. And then I'll just do a lower day real quick before I go into a more like minimalist approach that you can go with here. Lower day, we're just going to get everything out of the way. So we're going to start with calves, actually. We're going to start with calves, 2 to 3 sets. We're going to go leg extension. Leg extension, 2 sets. Leg curl, 2 sets. This is just my preferred approach. I guess I'll explain real quick why I do it this way. Then I'll probably go squat pattern, 1 set. I'm going to go adductor to give us a break after the squat pattern because it's very taxing. We'll go 1 to 2 sets here. Then we'll go hinge. We'll go 1 set there. I find anything more than 1 set of squat and hinges is just too much. And the reason I'm going calves first, 1, It's going to improve ankle mobility, tibial rotation, which are going to be important for our squat pattern, potentially our hinge pattern as well. It's going to make them both feel better. Mainly the squat pattern, not really the hinge. So that's one benefit. Two, most people's calves suck, including mine. And so putting them at the start, theoretically more stimulus because less fatigue. So there's that. Also, it helps prevent us from skipping them at the end of our workout, which most people do. If they have them at the end, like for me, this is what I do with abs. I'm guilty of skipping those, I can't lie. I'm usually pretty cocked after my leg day. I've got 2 sets of crunches that I have to set up, like the med ball, and I do this weird variation cable crunch. Like usually a lot of the time I just can't be asked, and so I'll end up skipping it. And so putting them first helps us prevent that. And then other main reason, I feel like there's one more that I usually recommend. Also, if you're doing a straight leg variation, which you should be if our goal is calf hypertrophy, then doing that with tired quads is fucking hard. You're gonna be shaking like fucking Parkinson's. So sorry, that's not very respectful of somebody who works with people with Parkinson's sometimes. But I'll park your son. Let it get shaky. I'll park your son. Okay, I already made that joke in a video, so fuck you. But yeah, you're gonna be shaking like a motherfucker if you have tired quads. So calves first, then leg extensions, because one, best quad movement, because we're training all 4 quads in a squat. You're not really training the rectus femoris because of that principle that I talked about with a long head before of the triceps. Also, we're only training knee extension here, so we're probably getting more quad stimulus theoretically because of the fact that we're not also training hip extension, and therefore maybe taking away some of that stimulus and giving it to the adductors, glutes, etc. And then same principle with a leg curl. Also, they're both shortened position movements, so there's less peripheral fatigue and less supraspinal fatigue because they're less taxing, generally speaking. So they're not going to affect the rest of your exercises as much because they're not as taxing. Like if you did a squat at the start of your workout, squats take fucking pretty long time to recover from afterwards. And so you could do something like calves after that to kind of give yourself a break, which is the idea here with the adductors, as opposed to going squat, then hinge, back to back, 2 really taxing movements. That can be pretty tricky. Although you're probably going to have to warm up for both, so that can kind of serve as that like break. So this is all like, you can make all these arguments. You can see I obviously acknowledge the nuance. It's not that deep. Do however you want to do it. This is just my preferred approach, generally speaking. Then let's say we throw in, we'll throw in glutes. I'm not going to specify what kind. Ideally, we do something more in the short because the hinge will train the glutes more in the lengthened position depending on the type of hinge you're doing. We'll go 2 sets here. Why not? And then we'll throw in abs. We'll do 2 sets here. That's my preferred approach. I'm just going to copy and paste this because of the reasons I already explained. Whoops. Now you could just change the variation slightly, but make them similar enough to where you're training most of the same muscle fibers. So like this could look like maybe we do a pendulum on this day and then a hack on this day, or maybe we do a what else could we do? I don't know. Maybe we do a GHD crunch on this day and then a cable crunch on this day, for example. Those are just some examples of that. And you can apply that same concept here. So I think I already touched on this, but like if you want to do one curl variation here, you can just do a different curl variation here. They're likely similar enough to where that principle I was talking about with the fiber overlap probably doesn't matter because we're training most of the same fibers most likely. So yeah, hopefully that idea makes sense. Now let's go into what a more minimalist approach will look like, one that most people will probably do. So again, one more thing I want to say, you could make the argument if we're just talking about from a movement perspective and not really a hypertrophy perspective, which is something that I'm doing a course on more of that side of things. And so I'm gaining more, I guess, respect, if that's the right word for that sort of thing, in terms of like having something like a dip where we're training the shoulder in hyperextension, which is an internal rotation, which is something that people don't really have access to. You can make the argument that we should have that in the program and we should get good at that for shoulder health reasons and just movement reasons. You can make the argument then that we don't need to repeat that twice a week. So maybe we just take advantage of the fact that we have more time on this push day to work on some of our movement, what's the word I'm looking for? our movement issues, if you want to say that, whatever word you want to use. So that's a totally valid way to approach that sort of programming. But let's say we're not doing that and we don't need to do that. I would probably take this part out just because the lower chest will be trained quite well with any kind of flat movement where we're doing horizontal adduction mainly. So pec deck, flat press, etc. will be good there. And so this is probably what I would do. 1, 2, this is 6 exercise. I think this is awesome. This is an awesome push day. We're training pretty much everything very well. And then you could even take it a step further. You could take out this JM press. And we could just do this. I think this is a very solid. This is usually what I'll end up programming. I think maybe I'll usually have the JM press in there. Depends on the person and what they want to do. But I think this is probably the general approach that I'll go with. And you can do 2 sets of these if you can recover from them. Sure, why not? You could even do up to like 3 to 4. What the fuck? 3 to 4 sets of curls and push downs. Maybe even lateral raises as well. Again, not too worried about the volume here, but this is just what a more minimalist approach would look like. Bicep curl, we'll do like 2 to 3. I'll put 2 to 3 here, I guess. I think, yeah, I'll keep that the same. So these, you can see these are quite short now, and that could be good because, again, you're training 5 days a week. That means more time dedicated to training. And if you're doing this split, you most likely have a lot of time, like I already said. So this probably isn't your biggest concern, but if it is, and you just like to train for like routine purposes, but you don't have that much time, then this can actually be an awesome approach for you. And so then we would just combine these days on our upper day. So that would look like this, and fucker, and this, bang, and then we will just get rid of these 2 rows. Fucker. Fuck. I did the wrong one. Alright, there we go. Now this is what? An 8 exercise or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Fuck you. 9 exercises. So still a lot more doable. I should probably change. We'll just put 2 for all these just to make it easy. Even though I would probably do one of these. Yeah, we'll do that. Fuck it. So this is what more of a minimalist approach would look like. So again, you could find like more of a middle ground. Holy shit, I do this every video, but my arms are just getting bigger by the fucking week, son. Anyways, holy fucking douchebag, am I right, guys? Okay. Again, you could go on like, you can find a middle grounds. You can even go like more minimalist than this, 100%. There's a million ways to skin a cat when it comes to programming. I think if we just understand general principles, which is what I tried to show you here, and also walk you through like what that actually looks like, then programming is pretty easy in my opinion. When it comes to hypertrophy, it's quite easy in my opinion. I think because I've been spending a lot of time trying to learn more about like pain specifically and movement quality and things like this, I've come to appreciate like the intricacies of those sorts of things and how like, I don't know, I think it's just because I've done this so many times and I have what I like to think is a pretty good understanding of this shit that like, this is just easy for me now. And the point I'm trying to make here is that you don't have to overcomplicate it. Programming is pretty simple. I mean, hell, I literally have now, I have full body, upper lower, push-pull legs, upper lower, and general workout program. I think I might even have a 5th one. So literally anybody could make their own split based off my videos. And so, yeah, I think the point I was trying to make is that there's a million ways to skin a cat. You could go minimalist, maximalist. You can change variations based on what you have access to, what works for you, what you enjoy, etc., etc. It's not that deep. Just follow the general principles that I said if you agree with the physiology, and do what you enjoy, what is sustainable, and most importantly, what actually works for you, what actually allows you to progress, because that's what's most important. Holy shit. All this stuff is theory, and this will work for 99% of you, but you're going to have to adjust like volume and different things like that based on your specific recovery, capacity, needs, preferences, preferences, etc. I'm done yapping. Hopefully this was helpful. Please comment any questions you guys have if anybody's watching this shit. Let me know what you want to see next. It will hopefully be the pecs 101. I think I'm going to start with pecs at least, but we'll see. Maybe I'll go with a different muscle group. But hopefully you guys are good. If you want to work with me, just shoot me a DM or apply, link in bio. I'll help you with programming, help you with dieting, with nutrition, with some gut health stuff, with some pain stuff, with some other stuff. I'm always upskilling, trying to learn more and improve my skills and help you guys out more. So if you're interested in that, just hit me up. Happy to try to help you out. If not, fuck you. I'm just kidding. But like and follow, or like and subscribe, comment, whatever. Do whatever. Bye, guys.